we just started recording this, so thank you. It's a nice Sunday afternoon here, and we've got Philippe in the evening in Bordeaux. And normally we just choose not to have the decks up when we prefer that you see the Negociant and the winemakers. But Philippe sent us his PowerPoint, and we thought it was so spectacular that we should use it today. There's just so much great information in it. So I'm really pleased that we'll be learning a lot about how the Negociant model works in Bordeaux, which is quite unique. And I won't steal Philippe's thunder. There's lots to talk about there. So, without further ado, from Vintex, one of our longtime partners, and we certainly appreciate that partnership, Philippe, I'll put it over to you, and off you go.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Michael. Well, Vintex was founded in 1982, and we've been a partner of Opinion for, I would say, 20 years. Tonight, indeed, we're going to talk about the Negociant system, which is a unique in Bordeaux, because not everybody can understand why you should go through a Negociant if you want to buy a wine, when you can buy it directly from the producer if you're living in the USA or Italy or wherever. So this is what I'm going to try to explain to you tonight, the system of La Place de Bordeaux, the Negociant system in Bordeaux. And please do not hesitate to raise your hand if you have any question, and if you would like to ask anything, I will be happy to answer your question. Est-ce que je peux prendre l'écran, Anaïs, s'il te plaît?
Oui, je te donne ça.
He's just getting control so that he can
yes, please.
He can present this. So it'll just take a moment for it to come up on everybody's screen. There it is. I have it on mine, Philippe.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Michael. So if we want to understand the, I cannot move the slide. Okay, if we want to understand the Bordeaux system, we have to go back into history, because what we are doing today, the way we are working today goes back a long time ago. We have to go back to the 12th century with Aliénor d'Aquitaine. Aliénor d'Aquitaine was married the French king in 1137. She married the French king. 15 years later, she married the King of England, and that's how Aquitaine, where Bordeaux is located, Aquitaine became part of England. So in the 12th century, our region was belonging to the United Kingdom. Thanks to that wedding, the trade of Bordeaux wine developed very fast with the UK, and this is when the French, the Bordeaux claret, le claret, we were calling red Bordeaux wine claret by that time. The French claret became famous thanks to the way Aliénor d'Aquitaine was promoting our wine in England, and that's how it became famous in the 12th century. In the next century, the trade of Bordeaux wines developed through Northern Europe and became famous all over the continent. By that time, many foreigners founded some trading companies in Europe, and Bordeaux became famous all over Europe through the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th century. By that time, before in the 15th, 16th, 18th century, obviously we had no fax, we had no email, we had no cell phone. I checked it on Google, and there was no cell phone in the 16th century. So I can promise it is true. So by that time, the way we were doing business was that we had wine merchants who wanted to source good wine, and for it they were calling the assistance of a courtier, a broker, and the role of the broker was to take his horse and go to the Médoc or to Saint-Emilion and to try to source the good product for the wine merchants. So this is how the system the Bordeaux trading system started by that time in the 15th, 16th century. There was no connection between people because they were a one-day journey away by horse. And so people could not easily communicate. And this is when the system of Bordeaux originated. As a wine merchant, I was trying to find a wine. I could not reach the owner, so I was commissioning a broker who had to go to the property and who had to source the right wine for the right people. So this is when the system started, the system we are going through today still. In 1855, Napoleon Bonaparte decided to have a classification of the best Bordeaux wines. And so he mandated the best brokers from Bordeaux to issue a new classification for the best Bordeaux wines from Bordeaux. And that's how the 1855 classification was born. Everybody obviously heard about that classification. So in 1855, we had a Medoc classification that is still accurate today, and that is still a reference 170 years later. So that classification was made by the brokers and Negociant together. By that time, in 1853 and 1855, this is when the Rothschild family, just to give you an example, the Rothschild family purchased the Chateau Mouton and Chateau Lafite in 1853 and 1855. We had the English branch of the family who purchased Chateau Lafite, that later became Lafite Rothschild, and the French branch of the family who purchased Mouton, that later became Chateau Mouton Rothschild. So we are now in the middle of the 19th century. A few years later, between 1865 and 1885, the phylloxera devastated our vineyard. So I'm sure everybody heard about the phylloxera. It was a disease in the vineyard that devastated the whole vineyard in Bordeaux. It was terrible. It was a nightmare. It was a puceron, aphids that was coming from the USA that devastated the French vineyard. And ironically, the solution after the phylloxera was to import American rootstock to replant the Bordeaux vineyard. So while the Bordeaux vineyard has been devastated by an American aphid, ironically, a few years later, we were importing American rootstock to replant the vineyard in Bordeaux. So we are here by the late 19th century. Then followed terrible period. We had the First World War. We had the 1929 economic crisis. We had the Second World War. So these were terrible times for the producers in Bordeaux. By that time, you were not a rich person because you were producing wine. You were a farmer. You had cattle, you had horses, you had cows, and eventually you were making a little bit of wine. That period from the early 90s until the end of the Second World War was terribly difficult, as you can imagine, for everybody. By that time as well, this is when the Negociant de Bordeaux, the Bordeaux wine merchants, became even more important because the Negociant de Bordeaux were buying the wine in bulk. They were buying barrels. They were not buying bottles. They were buying barrels, and they were buying bottles, corks, labels, and full barrels. And the Negociant were bottling the wine for themselves. So if you buy a wine from the early 90s until the early 1960s, the bottles will carry the mention mise en bouteille par, and you will have the name of the wine merchant. So if you buy a bottle from the 1920s, 30s, 40s, it will not be mise en bouteille au château. it will be mise en bouteille by, mise en bouteille means bottled by. If you buy a bottle from the early 20th century, it will be mise en bouteille by le négociant. So the role of the négociant by that time was even more important, because without the négociant, you wouldn't have any winemaker. Economically, they had a big role. Baron Philippe de Rothschild was the first one in 1924. He was the first one to bottle the wine at the chateau. So Chateau Mouton Rothschild was the first chateau in 1924. And if you Google Mouton Rothschild 1924, you will see a very special label for Mouton designed by a French artist by that time. 1924 was the first bottling at the chateau by Baron Philippe de Rothschild at Chateau Mouton Rothschild. But only Mouton and a few other wineries in the following years were bottling the wine at their winery, at the chateau, were bottling themselves. So until the early 60s, all wines were mise en bouteille by the négociant. That's why the négociants were important. As you can imagine, the farmers, people were cold and they had to go to war. So during the First World War, during the Second World War, there was almost nobody on the vineyard. So most of the properties had been abandoned, and it was economically very, very complicated for all these wineries. Early in the 60s, the chateau started bottling the wine by themselves. And so we went more into the business model we have today. The chateau were producing the wine and was selling the wine in bottle. The négociant was buying the wine and the négociant was selling the wine. So that goes back, the way we're doing it now goes back to the early 60s. Unfortunately, in the 60s and the 70s, we had only very difficult vintages, except in the meantime, we had great vintages. We had 1945, 1947, 1949, 1953, 1959, 1961, are 6 beautiful vintages in 15 years, because God blessed us with natures, and we've been blessed to be able to produce beautiful vintages. Aside of that, all other vintages have been, not all of them, but many of them have been very difficult. And if we go back to the 60s and 70s, it is not so easy to find good or very good vintages. Most of them are very average or mediocre vintages in the 60s and 70s.
And again, mainly yes. Weather related, Philippe?
Mainly weather related, mainly, yeah, we had many rainy vintages in the 60s and 70s. And it was also a question of financial means. By that time, most vineyards were going bankrupt. Many vineyards had no financial power, and many vineyards were somehow abandoned. And so you had to be a visionary because some people who are famous today and who make a very good living today because they own classified groves, they can thank their father or their mother or their grandmother to be a visionary in the 60s or 70s to buy a vineyard, because it was not so obvious in the 60s or in the 70s that it was a good idea to buy a vineyard. You had to be very brave in the 60s and 70s to buy a vineyard. So that was very difficult time for the Bordeaux winemaking business, 60s and 70s. In 1982, we have an amazing vintage, and we have a young American advocate called Robert Parker, who arrived on the scene, and he was the first one to say 1982 is a great vintage. Nobody before him said that. So he was the first one to say, by 1982, that's a big vintage. And that was the start of a new era for Bordeaux wines, because thanks to him, attention came back to Bordeaux from all over the world, because in very little time there was some kind of buzz around Bordeaux wines. And so we can say thank you, I think, to Mr. Robert Parker, because he brought back attention to us in 1982. Then we had the 80s and 90s vintages, 1980, 1990, with a good series of beautiful vintages. We had 85, 86, 88, 89, 90. And then we have 4 difficult vintages, 91, 2, 3, 4, were not so easy. And then we had 95, 96, 98. So we had another series of beautiful vintages. We had a new boom. We had a new boom for the Bordeaux trade business in 1997, that we were selling en primeur, futures sales. I don't know if everybody knows what en primeur sales are, but this is when we are selling the wine that is still in the barrels. And that's also a very important role of the Negociant, the Bordeaux Negociant, because we are buying the wine from the wineries and we are selling it to our customers all over the world. So again, the Primus system is another good reason for the wineries to go through the Negociant, because we are buying the wine, we are paying it upfront, and we are selling it to our customers. So financially, this is somehow attractive for everybody. In 1997, we had an explosion of our sales, because the Japanese people were very, very hungry for Bordeaux wines, and they wanted to buy anything they could get. That was my first year in the business, so I will remember that forever. I was a young and handsome man in 1997, and so in 1997 it was a new era for the en primeur system in Bordeaux. Then we have the early 2000 years, 21st century. We had a new explosion in 2009 and 2010. That time it was the Chinese people. The Chinese people wanted to buy anything they could get. And so we had a new explosion of prices in 2009 and 2010, because of the Chinese market that was very, very demanding. So it was again another jump in the system of the Bordeaux trade. And so we are now where we are standing now. So today in Bordeaux, we have about 300 wine merchants, like our company, like Vintex, and we are selling the wines from 6,500 producers. This is another reason why we have wine merchants in Bordeaux. This is that we have many wine growers in Bordeaux. Let me show you something, just to give you an idea. You can see how the Bordeaux vineyard is big. Bordeaux alone is big like Burgundy, Champagne, Alsace, and the Loire Valley together. So you can put four major area of production together, and they are the same size like Bordeaux. So if we would not have the Bordeaux Negociant selling the wines for 112,000 hectares, that makes a lot of wine, we would not be able to sell all these wines. We cannot compare the Bordeaux system with the American system. Napa Valley is a small area of production. You cannot compare Napa Valley and Bordeaux. You cannot compare Bordeaux and the Loire Valley, for example, even if you can find some Negociant in the Loire Valley as well. But it is obvious that we need the Negociant in Bordeaux, because without the Negociant, we would not be able to sell all this wine. So as you can see it on that slide, we have the wine merchants that goes through a wine broker, And so the wine brokers are the intermediate people between the wineries and the negociants. So we are talking about the wine merchant today, but we could also talk about the brokers, the courtier. The justification, I don't know if it is the correct word, justification for the wine brokers also goes back to the 15th and 16th century, like I was telling you earlier. They were the people who were taking their horses in the 15th and 16th centuries, and they were going to the wineries, and they were sourcing the good wine, and they were bringing back the good wine to the wine merchants. So the role of the wine brokers is also very important. They are somehow the head of diplomacy in a government. They have to be very diplomatic people because they are here to make the discussion between the winery and the wine merchant easier, softer. They have to be, again, very diplomatic people. And they also have to certify the quality of the wine. If I buy a wine from a winery, I will get a contract between the winery and my company, and the contract will be issued by the broker. And by issuing that contract, the broker has to certify that the wine is of good quality. So the broker is also very important in our system. They have to taste the wine, they have to certify the wine is good quality, and they give me the guarantee that I can buy that wine and I can sell it to my customer. So they are also very important in our system. Just to give you an idea, a broker, I don't know if it is important or not, but this way you will know it. A broker is taking 2% on any transaction, 2%. It is never 1%, 5%, 10%. They take 2% on any transaction. It goes back to 5 centuries ago. It was 2% 5 centuries ago, and it is still 2% 5 centuries later. So this is a very determined and fixed system. Obviously, it is not easy to understand Bordeaux for many reasons. And one of them is that we have 65 appellations d'origine contrôlée. Now we say appellation d'origine protégée, AOP, and not anymore AOC. AOC became AOP. We have 65 appellations in Bordeaux, and that's also one of the reasons why Bordeaux is not so easy to understand, because not everybody knows that we have a Blaye, a Côte de Bordeaux appellation, or a Crémant de Bordeaux appellation, or a Puisseguin Saint-Émilion, or L'Opiac, Listrac Médoc, etc., etc. It is not always easy to understand. When you read a label, you will always have the appellation on the label of your wine. But just to give you an idea, Bordeaux, the Bordeaux AOC, Bordeaux as a generic appellation, represent 47 of the total of the wines that are bottled in Bordeaux. So 47% of the bottles bottled in Bordeaux will carry the Bordeaux or Bordeaux Supérieur appellation. So Bordeaux and Bordeaux Supérieur represent 47 of our total bottling. And then you have 18% from Médoc, 11% from Saint-Émilion, 9% are dry white wines, 3% only are sweet whites, and 12% from the Côte de Bordeaux. So this is all in one, the various appellation and you can find in Bordeaux. So again, this is somehow the same picture you have here. The Negociant is in the center of the Bordeaux system. We can buy bulk wine and bottle it and sell it to our customer. We can buy wine in bottle. Our company Vintex, are only buying bottles that are bottled at the chateau. We don't buy bulk wine. We don't have any brand name, any brand wine. So we only buy wine that is mise en bouteille à la propriété, mise en bouteille au château. This is all we are doing, because for me, this is a guarantee a sign of guarantee, a guarantee of quality. I'm sorry, a guarantee of quality for my customers. I don't buy wine and put it anywhere and then bottle it and then do whatever I would like to do with it and then sell it to my customer. I only buy wine that was bottled at the winery, and once it is bottled, I take it into my my warehouse. So this is the way Bordeaux is working. 300 Negociant represents about 3,000 people promoting Bordeaux wine every day. And that's why our system is working. You do not have any other system in the world that is so much developed all over the world, because we have 3,000 people talking about Bordeaux wine every day. And that's why it is working. If every winery was trying to sell her wine by herself directly, it would take months or years, and it would cost them a lot of money to be efficient, like 3,000 people talking about Bordeaux wine every day. And that's why our Negociant system is working, because we are in any restaurant in the world, we are in any wine bar in the world, we are in any country, because we are many people on the ground, and that's why it is working. The Bordeaux Negociant are selling 70% of Bordeaux wines. I would say it is probably a little bit more than that, and 30% are wines from other regions, from Burgundy, from spirits, from other regions, from France. And we are also selling wines from abroad. And another evidence that our system is working is that the best brands in the world today, like Opus One from Napa Valley, or Almaviva from Chile, or Onelaya Maceto in Italy, they are some of the best brands in the world. They are coming to Bordeaux to have us selling their wine. If it would not work, they wouldn't come to Bordeaux to have us selling their wine. So this is a good evidence that our system is working. And yeah, this is a good evidence that we made our, we proved that it was working, and it is working actually. So the sales of Bordeaux wines are about 3 billion euros per year, which is quite important. I'm not sure we have to talk a lot about the en-primeur system here now, because this is not the purpose. This is mostly dedicated for the classified growth that we are selling as the futures sales. And that's it. And because we are in Canada today, it is important that you know where you are standing as a market. In the last classification rating, Canada was ranking number 10. It was number 8 recently. That number is by value. This is a classification by value. If we had a classification by volume, Canada would be number 8, which means that in value you're number 8, in volume you're number 8, in value you are number 10, which means that you are buying cheaper wine than the average.
Less expensive.
Less expensive, less very good quality price, very good quality price ratio. But Canada is number 10. So Canada is an important market for the Bordeaux Negociant. China obviously is number 1. China and USA last year, because that classification goes back 2 years ago. And last year it was China and USA together at the same level. But also for you to know, the French market alone, France alone, is drinking more wine than the rest of the world, more French wine than the rest of the world. So 55% of the Bordeaux production is drunk in France, and 45% is exported in the rest of the world. So the French market from very, very, very far is the number 1 market. And that's why
Philippe, what was the effect of COVID in France? Did they find new ways of buying wines? Did people are drinking as much at home?
It was a nightmare last year. It was a nightmare. What obviously developed very well was the sales online. Online sales had been very efficient last year, but aside of that, it was a nightmare. We had no more restaurant consumption. We had no more airline companies. We had no more hotel industry. So last year was a terrible year for the Bordeaux industry. That's why you have been very kind last year to make a special catalog, a special issue for wine that were using to sell their wine in the restaurants in France, and they certainly really appreciated your support. But last year was a nightmare, and today things are coming back, but very slowly. So things are not easy still, because market is still very slow. But hopefully better days are ahead of us now.
Yes, and certainly the orders from the current Bordeaux offering are good and strong. So I'm glad to see that. And I did want to say to the Opinion members on board how much it was appreciated throughout when that was CWeb 20 is what Philippe was referring to. And we were offering wines that would typically have been offered in restaurants and bars in France and Italy. And it really was well received by the makers. So. Great.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Philippe.
So this is the way it is working, Michael. Maybe people have questions, or I will be happy to answer any question.
Yeah, I've been watching the chat. If you do have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat. But I think that your presentation was so thorough, Philippe, there won't be any questions because we certainly understand it much better. And you and I had an offline discussion about this, and saying that one of the precepts of Opinion is to connect people with the actual winemakers. And the Negociant model is unusual to us, but it is because there are so many small winemakers. We're still being connected to them, but it's through you. So that's a wonderful thing, and we appreciate that. So, and I think that we were going to go through some of the wines that are in the current offering that you are offering through us, Philippe.
If there is no question, I will be happy to. I just wanted to draw your attention on a couple of wines that are in the cellar offering now. I had three in mind that are coming to my mind. I wanted to talk about Chateau Fontevraud. I'm starting with a sweet white wine. I wanted to tell you about this wine, first of all, because this is an amazing wine. It is so good. It is just so good. And because I was mentioning, no, I did not mention that. 3 weeks ago, we had a terrible frost in Bordeaux. That was the most terrible late frost we had in Bordeaux for decades. And so on May 5 and 6, we had terrible frost in Bordeaux. And we lost maybe, nobody knows exactly what are the numbers, but I would say we lost between 30 and 35% of the total crop in Bordeaux, in France. So maybe 1/3 of the production was devastated 3 weeks ago in France, because we had -4, 5, 6 degrees during 2 nights early May. And so many people lost a big part of their crop. And Chateau Fontevraud, unfortunately, is one of them, because the region that was the most impacted in Bordeaux was the Sauternes area. So when you know how much it is difficult to produce a beauty like that, because you have to be very brave when you are a producer in Sauternes. It is so difficult to produce a wine from Sauternes. When you know how much it is difficult, and when you know that they are suffering frost and they are losing in Sauternes, some people lost all of their crop. Chateau Fontevraud probably lost 2/3 of his production 3 weeks ago. So that's why I would like to recommend you to buy a few bottles of Chateau Fontevraud, because eventually we will not be able to offer it again next year. So this is this is a rarity that you can get from Opimian, and that wine is so good. I like to drink it as an aperitif. I like to drink it as an aperitif. Not so many people are thinking about Sauterne as an aperitif, but this is what I'm doing very often. I know women especially, but I'm not a woman, I can tell you, I can swear. So men as well can do that.
I do as well with foie gras all the time. I just absolutely love it. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can drink Sauterne as an aperitif, and you have to remember when you open, this is very important, when you open a bottle of Sauterne, you can drink a glass of Sauterne, you can put it back in your fridge, you can drink a second glass 2 days later, and you can drink another glass 3 days later. You can keep a bottle of Sauterne in your fridge for very easily for 2 weeks. So you do not have to open a bottle and drink it all. You can open a bottle of Sauterne and drink it during several days. So do not hesitate to open a bottle of Sauterne. I had Sauterne 2 days ago with a beautiful roasted chicken. This is a fantastic pairing, Sauterne and roasted chicken. This is fantastic. So do not hesitate to do that. And so I heavily recommend you Chateau Fontevraud. That's a beautiful, beautiful sweet wine. It is not too heavy because I do not like heavy Sauterne that are too rich in sugar. And this is not the case of Chateau Fontevraud. That's a beautiful Sauterne. So please go for it. Do not hesitate.
I'll be buying a case. I'm out, and I had some in my mini plan when I was an area rep, and I would always serve it as the dessert wine at the restaurant pairings. And
that's a good idea.
I'm completely out, and now I have to order a case this year. So.
Michael, you should buy 2 cases.
Okay, fair enough.
The other one I would like to talk about, unfortunately, I couldn't get a bottle with me because I had somehow an accident in the delivery of that sample to me, but it is Chateau La Chapelle d'Escurac. La Chapelle d'Escurac is Haut Médoc wine. That wine is not expensive, as you say it, Michael. This is very good value for money. This is an organic property. They are working, the owner of Chateau d'Escurac used to be the winemaker in very famous wineries like Chateau Montrose in Saint-Estèphe. So she's working. I like the way she's working. And this is a very approachable wine that she's making, very easy drinking, much red fruit. And this is a wine I like, easy to understand, easy to drink. This is a perfect wine for wine bars. This is the kind of wine you like to drink when you go into a wine bar and you want to drink an easy to understand wine. You can buy La Chapelle d'Escurac.
And won't that be nice when we can go to wine bars again? It's not too far away.
Yeah, this is the same for us, Michael. Restaurants reopened 10 days ago and 50% of their capacity. And so we are very impatient to be 100% of our capacity. This is very good news, indeed.
So, and we should mention about the La Chapelle. Some people, I saw it on Facebook that it's a new label this year. So people thought we didn't have it. But
this is a new label.
Sure you have a look. Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely. And the last one would be, that's my coup de cœur. I don't know how you say that. Coup de cœur. You say coup de cœur, right?
Oui, coup de cœur.
Oui,
we call it that both in English and French, but it does mean love at first sight. So
love at first sight. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. So this is my love at first sight, Madame de Beaucaillou. Because I like the packaging. This is a new brand. This is the first vintage, 2018 is the first vintage for that wine. And the property behind Madame de Beaucaillou is Chateau du Cru Beaucaillou, which is one of the best classified groves in Bordeaux. This is a second classified grove in Bordeaux, Chateau du Cru Beaucaillou in Saint-Julien. And so they decided to make that Madame de Beaucaillou as a tribute to Madame Bory, who is the owner of Chateau du Cru Beaucaillou. So this is a tribute to the mother of the current owner, Madame de Beaucaillou. I like the packaging, I like the cap, the color of the cap, and I like the wine. That's a beautiful wine. You will have more complexity and more structures compared with a wine like La Chapelle d'Escurac. This is also a different level of price, but to me, this is an amazing value for money because you have the know-how of the classified growth behind into that bottle. The same team, the same technical team is making the wine like for Chateau du Cru Bocaillou. So that wine is fantastic. Do not hesitate to go for that. This is a wine you can keep in you can drink it now if you like a little bit tannic wines with the structures, or you can keep it for another 5 or 10 years. It will not be a problem. So this is a wine you can buy or keep in your cellar, and at every stage of drinking it, you will not be disappointed.
That's typically what I do when I've got a case is I'll have one when it arrives so that I can get a good sense of it. And then I'll let it start to age and pick it up throughout the years.
Absolutely. This is the best way to do it. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I see it's almost equal amounts of Merlot and Cab Sauv with quite a bit of Cab Franc in there as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Michael.
A bit of Petit Verdot. Yes.
You're correct. Yeah, for grapes. Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, and I do have some, which this was not Au Magot. I'm having a bad day. It's Haute Maginée. So I do have this for a good Monday night wine. I've got that. I'm not going to open it. I'm going to stay with my with my beautiful single malt. And what was it you were telling me about the maker of this? He's the president.
Yes. The owner of Roselier is the president of the Whiskey Sommelier Whiskey Association. Monsieur Dupic is the president of the Whiskey Association. So he's considered as one of, if not the best producer of whiskey in France. It is originating from the northeast of France, and they are making a fantastic whiskey. And so this is a French whiskey that I like very much.
Marvelous. Thank you.
You can get another glass, Michael.
Yeah, well, and so just so you know, Philippe told me, look at what's left in this bottle. He said, "Oh, you can finish that bottle, no problem."
Yeah, you can.
I'll take my time. No, that's marvelous. And I'm not seeing any other questions through here. But so you haven't been able to travel this year, Philippe?
Not yet. I had my first injection 2 weeks ago. I will have the second one by the end of June, and I'm very impatient. So today we are 67 million people in France, and 25 million people out of 67 got their first injection. So about more than 1/3 of the population had a first injection. And 11 million people out of 67 have been vaccinated twice. So the elder people, 11 million, have been vaccinated. So we estimate that 50% of the population will be fully vaccinated by the end of summertime, and hopefully everybody by the end of the year.
And in a normal year, in a normal year, how many days, nights would you be away in travel?
Between 3 and 4 months.
Is that right? Eh?
Between 3 and 4 months, and I have not been traveling for 18 months. So I'm very sad, I can tell you.
Yeah, it's hard to get used to, isn't it? Looking forward to getting back to it.
I miss traveling. And I'm impatient to be able to go back to Canada. I love your country. I've been to almost any big city in Canada. I've been to Halifax, to Quebec, to Montreal, to Toronto, to Calgary, to Vancouver. I've been to many places in Canada. I love your country. I love Canadian people. Canadian people are very, very, very nice people. And I'm not saying that because I'm with Canadian people, but I love your country, and I'm impatient to come back.
Right. And do you have a major wine show coming up soon that you might be able to go to, or they're starting to line up?
Everything has been canceled or delayed for now. So the earliest fair we will have will be by the end of this year, should be October, November now in Asia. October, November in Asia. And we will have Vinexpo, which is the most important wine fair in France. We will have Vinexpo in February next year in Paris.
Wow.
Hopefully you can make it in February to France, Michael.
Sounds like a plan. Yes.
That's a good plan.
So, and Mandy's asking if you'd ever visited the Okanagan Valley wineries. That's in British Columbia here in Canada.
I have never visited any winery in Canada. I would love to do that. I would certainly love to do that. I have been to many places, but never visited wineries,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I will connect with Mandy next time I'm coming to Canada, and she will organize a tour for me.
And I'm actually just typing this to everybody, but she also said that she'd asked a question before about, do you visit the chateau or the Negociant when you go to France? And typically we can go and visit the chateaus themselves.
Absolutely. And seriously, if you have any customer who would like to visit wineries in Bordeaux, and we already did that together, we are organizing tours for them. We are very happy to assist your customers with that, because it is easy for me. It cannot be so easy for you to organize. I mean, for you Canadian people, it might be more complicated to organize visit in the best wineries, because they are very confidential places.
Yes.
I am happy to assist any opinion customer to organize a tour for them, and eventually go with them if I'm free when they are going. So we are happy to assist you with that, of course.
Well, and we'll be hitting you up, because Anaïs is working on a French tour that we're going to be offering to Opinion members in late spring next year, 2022.
Very
so
good.
we'll definitely be in touch, and we'll arrange to go and visit some.
Very good. Very good.
So
I see I have many guests already on the waiting list.
Yes, yes, that's right. Yes, I hope you have a big home.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And actually, I'm seeing that people are really interested in that Opinion tour. And if you send an email to memberservice@opinion.ca and just tell us that you're interested, and then we will have you on a special mailing list that you'll be the first to know as we get that tour set up. So that would be great. Well, thank you very much, Philippe. We certainly appreciate your taking the time late in the evening, and it's always a pleasure to chat with you. Look forward to doing that again next time. And
my pleasure, Michael. Thank you, Anaïs, for assisting me with that. and very seriously, this is a real invitation for you opinion members to come to Bordeaux. It's not only words. You're welcome to come and visit Bordeaux. Bordeaux is a lovely city. We have amazing cellars that have been built in the last 5 years. They look really amazing. So do not hesitate to make a trip to Bordeaux and come and see it.
Yeah, and I've always loved the tasting room at the École de Vin in Bordeaux.
Yeah,
absolutely. They've got that set up. They've always got some great
and La Cité du Vin. Someone Neil is mentioning La Cité du Vin. La Cité du Vin is also an amazing place. Yeah,
that's right.
Sure. No, so there are many things to do, and eventually you can drink a bit of wine when you're coming to Bordeaux.
Absolutely, yes. It's easy to find.
I can help with that.
That's right. Super. Thank you again, Philippe. And
thank you. Enjoy
your evening. Thank you, Anaïs, for taking care of this. And
thank you.
We'll see everybody again soon. Good night.
Bye-bye, Suzanne, Rachel, Greg, everybody. Bye-bye.